Okay, so today we're going to have a look at my new compressor. I decided to go for one called a Wolf compressor. I was going to go for an SGS, but I'd read a few reports online saying that there was a tendency for the thermal cutout to operate whilst you're using it for spraying, which, as I'm mostly going to be using it for spraying, that seems to be a bit of an issue. The Wolf one was pretty well reviewed, so I decided to go for that one instead. There's been a few issues which we will now go through. I've got a car to respray, I've got a Spitfire that I need to respray, which we'll show you in another video, and I've got the V-Test to respray. But when you add up the cost of rattle cans to respray a whole car, even a small one like a Spitfire, it adds up to actually more than just buying a proper compressor, a decent spray gun and all your paint. So it's much more cost effective to actually take the plunge and get the right kit, and hopefully I'll get a better result as well at the end of it. Time will tell. Right, let's go and have a look at the compressor. Okay, so this is my Wolf compressor, ordered through an online company called Mano Mano. Didn't know at the time that they're actually just a reseller, they don't stock the items. And the item actually came originally from a company called, I think, UK Sales or something like that. I'll post that a little bit later. Those of you with a keen eye will notice that there's a bit missing on the end. That's because that is here. So the compressor was delivered damaged. It looks like it's been dropped. You can see a significant amount of damage there to that casing. That casing was there to protect this motor. And as you can see, as that's been pushed back, it has caused damage to the blades on this fan. So it's had a reasonable amount of force applied to it, and so there's a big question mark about whether there's been any internal damage done to the components as well, which may not show for quite some time. So you'll also notice that it's broken the housing on here where the cover attaches. So that's a fair amount of force that's been involved in that. Contacted Mano Mano. They said I needed to contact the supplier, which I explained to them they were the supplier. That went backwards and forwards quite a bit, with them saying that I need to contact the supplier, and in the end I was asking them for contact details for the supplier. I had to ask them 4 or 5 times before finally I managed to get a phone number out of them for the original supplier. Wrote to the supplier, and they have sent me out a new motor unit, and we'll have a little look at that in a minute. This is the Wolf professional compressor. It's got a fairly decent spec on the face of it. It's 12.6 CFM, I think, with 150 psi maximum pressure and a 3 horsepower motor, which seems to be generally reckoned to be the minimum that you can get away with for spraying. And I went for a belt drive because I'd seen a lot of stuff on the internet that the direct drives, although the amount of decibels is similar in terms of the noise levels, it's a much higher pitch noise, it's much more intrusive. So the belt feed ones do seem to be quieter, even though the decibel rating is the same. In terms of hooking it up, it comes with an empty lead, so I've just put a caravan socket on there because there is a warning that it needs a 16 amp supply because of the startup currents, even though it's advertised as a 13 amp appliance, and it's got 2 regulators on the side. We're going to go and have a look at the box now, and you can see where the damage has come from. So this is the box that it came in. It's pretty substantial. It's got a wooden base to it, good and thick on the side. That's the damage. So what appears to have happened is that this has fell over sideways because it's not particularly well balanced. It's hit something on there, and that's damaged the side. The other thing that I pointed out to the home shopping people was that they have actually acted illegally sending this out. It weighs over 80 kilos. They sent it out on a single man vehicle with no tail lift and no pallet truck and no sack trolley. So the driver wasn't able to offlift it on his own. I was out, so my 79-year-old father had to help the driver to unload it. That's against manual handling regulations. It's a breach of health and safety. They denied that was their problem. They said the driver accepted the job. They clearly don't understand their responsibilities when it comes to subcontracting work out, that you are still responsible for the health and safety of the people that you contract to. So I was quite unimpressed with that, really, and that is probably one of the reasons why it's been damaged in transit. It's because it is too big for one person to manage on their own. Now we'll go and have a look at the replacement motor that they've sent out. So this is the replacement motor. Fair play, sent it out nice and quickly, no quibbles, they just sent it straight to me. However, that is how it was packaged. No protection whatsoever, woefully inadequate. The only thing it had around it was the polythene bag that you can just see in the bottom there. The box, as you can see, has suffered some damage. It's bulging out of the sides, and if I just turn this over, you can see there that it's also damaged. And on the other side, you can see the damage there. So again, woefully inadequate. You need to send your stuff out properly packaged, people. This is not acceptable. We can't rule out the possibility that there's damage which can't be seen to this motor because of the way it's been inadequately packaged before dispatch. It looks okay. We'll see how it performs once it goes on, but I'll be writing to the company explaining that should there be a failure that becomes apparent in 12 months' time, I would expect them to be liable for it. So pretty poor performance, really. Not that impressed. So you might think I should have just gone straight to SGS and bought the compressor from there. I would have been better doing that. It's the same spec as the one that I've got, it would appear. Well, not really, because I ordered some stuff from SGS. 3 weeks later, still hasn't arrived. Communication has been rubbish. I've ordered from them water trap, a blast cabinet, and some regulators, some connections and some hose. None of that's arrived, so I still can't use the compressor. Really unimpressive, really poor communication as well. They were supposed to have dispatched that 3 days ago after I chased it and chased it and chased it. Still hasn't arrived. Here we are, it's now 2:30 in the afternoon, still waiting for my stuff. So SGS, sorry guys, you need to up your game. The only company that's managed to actually deliver what I ordered in a reasonable state, in a reasonable time frame, out of the 4 companies that I've ordered stuff from, was Spray Guns Direct. All of their stuff arrived quickly, correctly and well packaged. So I think Spray Guns Direct will be getting my business in the future. Thumbs up for them. Right, so I think we're ready for the finally getting the compressor up and running. It's taken a very long time to get to this point because of having to replace this motor as per my previous. So we need to pop some oil in it before we fire it up, for which we need a funnel, which I happen to have in my Coleman stove, so that's quite handy. And we have some compressor oil, which is on back order, that's finally arrived. And apparently we are supposed to fill this to up to the red mark in there. So I don't know quite how well we're going to see that, but we'll see how we get on. I'll show you the mark in a sec. Okay, I don't know how much it uses, but I'm guessing that's going to last me quite a while. So that's the mark there. Hopefully you can see the oil is just there. Oh, and it's spilling out. I see. Splendid. Right, get a cloth and we'll wipe that up. Right, 20mm syringe. See if there's any oil left in there. Doesn't look like it. No, that's empty. And lots of kitchen roll. Mucky toad. Still, stops things from rusting. I don't know if that was a bit of back pressure because the air wasn't able to come out of the tank. There was a bit of a bubbling went on, and a bit more oil has now actually gone in, so it's about halfway up that red mark there. So I think that was more back pressure than the fact that it was full, because it has disappeared from the top of the thing there. So evidently the tank isn't vented very well. Right, this came in the in with the packaging. It took me a little while to work out what it was, but I presume that it's supposed to go onto there to fill that up. Right, and that should be that. Right, now in the instructions it says, do not attempt to operate this machine until you have ensured that it's filled to the correct level with the recommended oil, check, and you've installed the crankcase breather plug. Serious damage to the machine and personal injury may result if this is ignored. That's the only mention of that I can find in the instructions. There's no indication as to where the crankcase breather plug is. And I can't find anything either. Now, I'm presuming, I think it must be the top of this, because that's got a rattly thing inside it, so I think that that's the breather. But there was a pack of 2 screws and 2 things like that, one of which had a sort of red top on it, which there's no indication as to what those are in the instructions, so who knows. I'm assuming that that is the crankcase breather plug. I guess we'll find out in the fullness of time. Now the other thing that they recommend is that you don't use an extension lead. Just take the camera off for a sec. Now, what they say is don't use an extension lead, use a longer air hose. But as we know, the air pressure drops if you lengthen the air hose. This compressor is normally rated at 230 volts, and the UK domestic supply is 240 volts, and frequently houses will be higher. And I happen to know that this house is higher. So I've used an extension cable, because voltage drop is really not going to be an issue in the UK, or shouldn't be, if your power supply is reaching a sort of reasonable level. So what we've done then is use an extension lead, and we've fitted that with commando sockets because it should be a 16 amp supply. Again, there's some contradictions in the instructions because they talk about it needing a 13 amp supply, but then they say elsewhere that it needs a 16 amp independent supply for the startup current. So that should be okay. That's on a separate 16 amp supply, so we should be okay on that. So I've got a number of packs of fittings which are quite useful to have, which I bought extra. So we've got the bayonet fittings, we've got male to male screw fittings as well, because what I found was a lot of the accessories had a female receiver. So these, which came with the compressor, well, they didn't come with the compressor, I ordered a pack, but they weren't really that useful because they didn't have any of these converters. So I ordered these from Spray Guns Direct, so that now we've got converters to put onto those. Now this outlet I think is the regulated pressure outlet. The one on the back is the unregulated. I've got a water trap filter. Obviously that's got its own regulator on it as well, but I'm going to fix that onto the regulated one just because it won't fit on the unregulated. Mainly just to get the water out of any water out of the system before I start spraying. So we'll put that on, and then we'll fit the hose onto this side, not with a quick release connector, but just with a standard male to male, because the information that I've had from good old YouTube is try and avoid as much as possible having quick release fittings, because they suck a bit of your air pressure. So we'll put that onto there, hopefully. There we go. She does. Right, you'll notice on here that it's got a indicator for the direction of air. So of course I've got it on the wrong way around. So we're going to swap that round and then see if it works. Just to test it out and spray through any condensation and water that's already in the system. Take that male to male off. So that's your male to male connector. Put the spray gun on the end. Handy grips again. There we go, that's fine. Right, we'll rev him up and see what happens. But we've got a little bit of trouble with this regulator here, just because it needed screwing right down. It wasn't actually doing anything, so it was recording no pressure on the dial, so I screwed it right down, and then eventually there was a little bit of resistance, felt it started to come up, and as you can see, we have air. Cool. I think we're ready to boogie. So I've had the Wolf compressor for about a month now. I've had the opportunity of doing some spraying with it and also using it in my SGS glass cabinet, which I'll be doing a review on later. So up to now it's performed pretty well. There's been no thermal lockout or anything like that on it. It's providing plenty of air despite the quite long lengths of the hose, sort of about 20-30 metres. It's providing plenty of air, so generally pretty pleased with it. The only real issue that I've had, I think, is with filling it with oil. I initially filled it so that I could see it was halfway up the red level on here, as per the instructions. And then looking at the bottle, that was about 200 mils, but in the instructions it says that you should put 500 mils in it. So I measured out 500 and filled it with, in total, so another 200 odd, 250, 300 mils. Filled it up. And then what I found was when I was using it, it's all spraying out of the top and going everywhere. So it appeared to be too much, and it's really not very easy to see the level on this. When you come back to it to refill it, you can't really see how you're getting on. And the other problem that I've had is with the filler itself. It doesn't vent very well. So even using a 20mm syringe, which I've got somewhere. So I've tried using a 20mm syringe rather than a funnel, so that I don't block the aperture, and even with that it just overflows. The air inside the crank can't get out. It really needs a filler that's separate to the crankcase breather. It needs a separate breather so that when you fill it you don't get airlocks and spray and get oil pissing everywhere, because that's what happens at the moment. So that minor little gripe aside, that's about it really. Pretty happy with it. I would probably recommend that you get one if you're looking at a compressor in that kind of market to do spraying and blasting and so on. I wouldn't get it from Mano Mano, and I wouldn't get it from UK Shopping or whoever it was that supplied it, because their service was pretty poor. But in terms of the compressor itself, yeah, it's been alright.